Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the F124 Driver Career Mode. Here with the Haas F1 team in Season 1, we are taking our visit to the Singapore circuit, the original night race on the F1 calendar, now round 18 of 24 in this season. So getting to the tail end of the season. We weren't able to follow up our Monza victory with any good result. We had a mechanical engine failure DNF in Baku last time out. So we're hoping for a little bit better results, especially now that the most recent developments on the car have made us jump from being kind of top of the back pack to bottom of the top pack. And since the top pack is so close together, definitely allows us to be fighting for those groups of high points finishes. Now, taking a look at the short version of the weather, it looks like we are not expecting any rain in qualifying or the race for this session. So we should have a fairly straightforward weekend here in Singapore. But let's take a look at the messages, see if there's any extra weather details and the developments that we have in progress and on the car to see where we're at in the performance charts. All right, let's take a look. Weather forecast, no rain, just a little bit of cloudiness on the docket for us. So should be pretty straightforward. All of our specialists, all goals are passed for the weekend. So we will have the maximum gain for them available, unless there's some in-race objectives which can help out. You can see development-wise, we've jumped forward. We still have a engine development on the way. It looks like Mercedes is taking a little bit of a step forward, but we're right there with the top 5. Engine components, let's get some fresh ones or relatively undestroyed ones in the car for the race. It's looking like we may run into a limitation with the MGUH. We've had 2 failures this season, so we might need to take one more grid penalty before the end of this season in order to get another MGUH component. But we will soldier on and see what we've got. But let's head over to qualifying.
It is one of our great cinematic settings of the season. Welcome to Singapore. We're under the floodlights with the walls close and pole position up for grabs.
Here we are out on the Singapore City circuit, flinging it through the last couple of corners to start our first flying lap of the track, headed down into turn 1. A little bit deep through turn 1 there, puts us offline for turn 2, and then turn 3 is a little bit unideal. Now headed to the right hand, I believe this is turn 5, technically. A little deep there, a brush of the wall, so definitely some lost speed down this entire straight here. A little right-handed kink and into the braking zone. One of the better overtaking opportunities on the circuit, probably the longest DRS zone. Now, unlike real life where they've recently added a 4th DRS zone, we still are rocking with only the 3, but we will live and make do with that now through tricky little technical section, including this little spot where the Singapore sling used to be, and then over the bridge and the sharp hairpin that leads on to the 3rd DRS zone. Open up that rear wing. And this right-hander at the end of it is a little bit potentially of an overtaking opportunity if you have a significant tire advantage, but getting out of the hairpin with proper pace is a little tough line astern. Now we're headed down to the last couple of corners. Just a right-left chicane before you hit the final 2 with the combination of corners removed temporarily while there's construction. But open up the rear wing across the line. Provisional P4, 28.1 on the board. But we are 0.8 off of Carlos Sainz up in P2. Looking at the weather report back in the garage, you can see some rain potentially coming in about 10 minutes. So we're actually going to get out early for our final flying run of the session. You can see there's about 6.5 minutes left to go starting this. So we're on our fresh set of tires and looking to make sure we don't get caught out waiting for the last minute because of the rain. A better run through turns 1 and 2 sets us up for turn 3 and the exit a little bit better. There's plenty of time to be gained here in the right-hander. You can see huge increase on the delta there thanks to that better exit through turn 4. Already over a half a second, nearly a second up now as we work our way through the middle portion of the lap. So it's all about maintaining the highest minimum speed you can through these couple of corners. The car loves to just kind of understeer through here, and a bit of a snap as the car actually switches to oversteer. Got on the throttle a little bit too early, and then trying to make sure you get the brakes on for the hairpin without locking up. We found about 8, almost 9/10 of a second already in this one. The second half of the lap was decent on our first run, but a little bit of track evolution has taken place. And we are trying to see what we can find at the very end here. 9/10, about 1 second, a little bit wide through that penultimate couple of corners, but we are going to find just about a second on this lap. Puts us on a 27-1 and puts us provisionally P3 behind Alonso and Leclerc. So we'll see if that changes when the rest of the AI gets out, or if the rain will hold it back.
Qualifying complete. All that remains is the main event. We'll be live and uninterrupted for the Grand Prix tomorrow, so make sure you join us then.
So Alonso on pole. We did maintain that P3 position.
It's the Singapore Grand Prix, where Sebastian Vettel has the most wins here with 5. Who will be lifting the trophy today here at the Marina Bay Circuit? It is a wonderful racetrack to come to, but it's sometimes been a bit tricky to overtake. We have a new layout to try and change all of that. Reduced to 3 miles, it's turn 16 and turn 19, which has gone from corners to a straight. Before we begin, let's take a quick look at the grid lineup for today's race. An immense lap from Fernando Alonso yesterday puts him on pole position. Charles Leclerc alongside. As we continue through the rest of the grid today, we have old-timer Verstappen, Sainz, Hamilton, Stroll, Oscar Piastri, Russell, Norris, Perez, Ricciardo, Hülkenberg, Gasly, Tsunoda, Zhou, Sargent, Bottas, Albon, and Esteban Ocon lines up at the back of the grid. Which of these talented drivers will come out on top today? It is going to be some race today. I'm Alex Jakes. Joining me is Naomi Schiff. Now, those final hours before a race, did you have a routine?
Well, every driver certainly has their own way of preparing themselves before a race. But I can tell you that pre-race rituals are a real thing. When I was in go-karting, I used to touch every wheel in a specific sequence before I got into the kart. And then I stepped up to cars and had a specific set of fireproof base layers just for race day. So watch the drivers when they're on the grid. Some may be sitting on the floor and isolating, others may be up to other things that they do. But these little things really help their minds get ready for the race.
All right, on the grid here in P3, so only one car ahead of us. Let's take a look at the strategy options available. Looks like 47.55 for the one stop. 48.05 is competitive for the two stop, but tough track to overtake on. Not one we're typically going to expect a lot of moves on. So sticking with the one stop strategy should be ideal, especially up at the front. No reason to really risk and put ourselves back and have to squabble with cars in the pack. We should only have the lead group. So let's get our fuel load dialed in. Make sure we aren't either over or under fueled, and then head off to the start of the race. Here come the 5 red lights. They are up. They are out, and a pretty bogged down start off the line. Verstappen already sent through. Sainz has the inside line on us. We're going to try and go around the outside. We've got just about a nose there. We can go on turn 3. Just about hold the outside on Sainz. Getting the traction out of the corner. We're able to hold alongside of him. And that'll give us the inside for turn 5. So back up into P4. Verstappen has launched his way up into challenging for the lead of this race against the Ferrari. Is there anywhere for us to have a little dive in turn 7? No. Turn 8 maybe? We can have a little lunge to the inside. Going to get late on the brakes, get to the inside of Alonso. A little bit of a brush of contact. He's still there. We left him space on the outside. Unfortunately, not able to really make a move on him, so we're going to tuck back in to P4 behind Alonso. Now, not a very ideal run through this technical portion of the circuit. Has cost us a little bit of time. In fact, very deep on the brakes into the bridge section there, and some big wheel spin trying to get back on the power. And trying to come to terms with the heavier fuel load and get settled into a rhythm, but you can already see 0.8 of a second the gap between ourselves and Alonso. They're really starting to run away. Verstappen has taken the lead of this race. And we are just going to try and hang on to this group ahead of us. Use the DRS. Try and be quick. A 33.5 for Verstappen. A very quick first lap, especially having started a little bit behind us in this one. So as DRS is enabled here on lap 2, we've managed to stay within the DRS range of the Aston Martin just ahead of us. Fernando Alonso started on pole, has some work to do to try to get back up there, but we have lost our initial podium starting position, so we are going to need to do some work to try and get that back. And it does look, though, like unlike most tracks, I'm actually having a little harder time keeping up with the AI on race pace compared to qualifying. Usually, qualifying is my weak point, and the race pace is usually a spot I can make moves forward, but we'll see as the race develops. Maybe it's just the way that we're handling the heavy car at the start of the race. We have set a purple first sector and a personal best in the second sector. Not a surprise considering first lap takes into account that standing start, but we're just barely hanging on to the back of the DRS of Alonso here. We get ready to head on to lap 3, and a big tank slapper coming out of the second to last combo of corners there. And a huge mistake, but a 30.1, so we were actually probably on pace to be right there with Alonso without that big snap. We do get the DRS down the front straight, and we have a good run through turns 1, 2, and 3 in order to stay right behind Alonso, potentially at the detection point. Yes. DRS is counting down and DRS is opening. So we've managed to stay in DRS range of the Aston Martin ahead. However, the AI has typically been beating me around the middle part of this track. Hopefully when they're running nose to tail, we might be able to gain a little bit of time based on that accordion effect of braking and accelerating into and out of the slower corners. But can't get ahead of ourselves. We're very early on in this 31 lap race. Singapore, of course, typically the longest duration race of the year because of its decent track length, but also slowest overall speed aside from Monaco. So it does take some time to cover that track. And, we're lapping around the minute 30 some odds with 31 laps of that to go. So it'll be a decent race. It looks like we might be staying just about close enough in order to keep DRS. But you see that rear light flashing on our car. We're having to use a lot of battery in order to maintain this gap to the cars ahead. And no, rear wing does not flip open. We have fallen just outside the DRS of the car ahead. So maybe we can close it up through turns 1, 2, and 3 here. It's probably our strongest couple of corners against the AI. And no, 1.2 seconds the margin. So lap 3 and start of 4 sees us lose that. And now we have Carlos Sainz looking to close down the best overtaking opportunity. He's going to move to the inside. And I was actually going to try and lift and coast to try and give him a lane through. Maybe we could follow him up, but he's now stayed side by side with us. We're just going to go ahead and close the door on the exit of turn 8 there and take away that spot. But now having the lift, not having Carlos get that move done, we're 2.3 seconds back. So you can see just how much fighting with another car costs you and in the lap time overall. And like I said, was trying to lift, let him get a clean pass, but he stayed side by side. And it would have cost us even more time to try and let him through. So we'll give him another shot maybe on the next lap, but we're definitely falling back of the podium positions, and we're going to need some kind of intervention, I think, in order to maintain any kind of race. You can see even on a non-DRS straight, Sainz gets off that corner very well, closing up in the rearview mirror. We have an opportunity to regain our battery a bit. Keep an eye. Sainz shouldn't make a lunge down into turn 1. Well, let's jump ahead now. Lap 6 of 31, so we move forward another lap or 2. And this time, Sainz is very close, headed into the DRS zone, and gets by us a lot more straightforward. Alonso has ballooned the gap to 3.8 seconds ahead of us. So this is where we're hoping that the overall pace of the Ferrari is better than ours, but not so good that he streaks away from me. And then we can utilize the DRS to help us kind of claw our way back in. We were pushing very hard, even with the clean air, to try to stay with Fernando Alonso. So likely have also done a bit of mistreatment of our tires on this one-stop strategy that we have scheduled for the race today. You can see the Aston Martin of Lance Stroll in a decent spot right behind us, so we're still fighting with him. That Aston Martin is in amongst the pack of that lead group. Another slidey moment coming out of the last setup for the final corners, so it's definitely getting interesting. But jumping ahead now, lap 9 of 31. We've stuck with Carlos Sainz quite nicely. The gap 3.7, so it's pretty much leveled off the gap to Fernando ahead. And it's starting to feel like Carlos's overall pace is starting to drop off a little bit compared to ours. So we're very close. We're going to set up a move down into turn 7. So he defends the inside. We're going to go all the way around the outside, take the racing line, get to the apex fully ahead of him, and make that move stick. So back up into P4, still hoping to try and eye the podium positions, but we're going to definitely need either a mega undercut and final stint or a little bit of safety car intervention. 3.6 seconds is quite a bit of a gap to try and close up. It doesn't seem like the tires are falling off quite as hard for the cars ahead as they are for Carlos. We're getting close to about a third of the way through this race and still pressing on in this one. You can see the tires getting a little worn into the 20% range for the right sides, which take a bit of a heavier beating, especially because of these last 2 corners. Really lean on the tire through that combination. And now we'll see as we head back through turn 1, 2, and 3 if we'll have the favor returned. We did not. We stayed ahead of Carlos Sainz. Valtteri Bottas out of the race, but it looks like he's parked up in a position where it's not going to harm or call a safety car. We're now 5 seconds back of Fernando Alonso. Carlos Sainz still very much trying to put the moves on us, but we've managed to hold a decent bit of gap. Lap 14, we should also be getting just about to the pit stop window, and indeed we are going to come in on lap 14. The original plan was lap 15. Tires aren't feeling particularly great at this stage. We're losing time to the cars ahead, so we'll see if we can make a little bit up with the undercut and then also get onto the hard tire. Should have plenty of life to get to the end of the race on the hard tire. We're nearly to the halfway mark. So we took the mediums almost halfway on the heavier fuel load. It'll just be that much easier for the hard tire at the end. I do believe the medium tire was a little better of a race tire grip-wise. The hard tire probably isn't quite the optimum, hence why we took the medium tire so long into the race rather than pitting super early and getting onto the hard tire. But we will still have a bit of work to do as Carlos Sainz very much closing the gap over the course of this lap now that we're thinking about coming into the pit lane. So only a few more quarters before we take a interesting dive into the pit lane. It's a tricky one to try and turn into. So on the brakes now, trying to not hit the wall as you head to this, and then a very slippery kind of braking zone entering the pits. So as we trundle down at the pit lane speed limit, eye up our box. Let's see if we can have a good stop, get us filtered out into some good air. So tires go off, tires go on. Pretty decent bog standard stop. No delays in this one. And of course a tricky exit from the pit lane as well because of this wall on the left side. It's barely wide enough to fit your car, and then you really got to hug it on the way out. But so we filter out. It looks like there's a Williams just a little ahead of us. Alex Albon about 3 seconds ahead. We've gone ahead and moved our ERS deployment up to the hot lap mode to start closing up to the cars just in front of us. We should have a pretty significant tire offset in order to make some on-track overtakes on the cars ahead. So let's see if we are able to clearly get through on these and not lose too much time. That is always the danger of the undercut, is coming out with some traffic ahead of you, needing to go and find some time. But here we go, already nearly within the 1 second, not quite there at the last detection point. So no DRS to help us out down the straight this time, but we do have both Williamses, Sargent and Albon ahead. Ocon about 5 seconds up is some clean air that we'll be able to work with. Looks like some of the leaders also coming into the pits. So we'll see if how much time we're able to gain via the undercut. We really were pretty clean on this lap, and it does look like one of the Williams is into the pit lane. We should have a very good exit thanks to our better grip. Looking to the inside, defending to the inside is Sargent, so we're going to switch it to the outside and go right around the outside into turn one and manage to get clear. So looking ahead, Alonso now only 2.5 ahead, Leclerc 3.5. So we managed to carve about two and a bit seconds on the undercut. Now the question is, can we keep up this pace in order to catch up, or will he start running away? It does look like they are already increasing the gap by a little bit. Very deep. That corner is going to cost a chunk of time. But overall, as far as the undercut goes, definitely came out in some nice clean air. It looks like the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz has stayed out in this one, so he was hounding us at the early stages. We'll have essentially at least 2 laps worth of undercut, but we actually had a very good sector there. Now 2.4 seconds. It looks like the lead pack, or the net leaders, are actually getting held up a bit by it looks like one of the Saubers. So into the pit lane, you can see pretty much everybody else that's ahead of us now. So we'll filter out our teammate even in the pits. And there goes the Sauber into the pits. So managed to gain a decent chunk of time thanks to that slowdown. Now only 2 seconds the gap to them, but I don't think it's going to be quite enough. We are still in P4. Carlos Sainz, filtering out of the pit lane, has gone all the way back, fallen behind Lewis Hamilton even. He's 7.8 seconds, 8 seconds now back as he gets back up to racing speed. So basically found about 7.5 seconds via the undercut. We're going to jump ahead though up to lap 30 of 31, a huge jump forward. Sainz was able to get past Hamilton back into P5. We were not able to close the gap to the lead pack of Alonso, Leclerc, and Verstappen. But we had a relatively quiet, clean air kind of race.
Okay, so we're leading our teammate by 21.3 seconds. Okay, they're on old hard tyres. They're in 13th place.
We were checking to see if our teammate might be able to be in the points paying positions, trying to see where he was at, but alas, 13th place. We are having to do a bit of fuel saving on this last couple of laps. We had the gap to about 6.5 seconds to Sainz. Was never really coming down after he passed Hamilton. The only time we've really given up is via the lift and coast. So we underfueled a little bit more a little bit too much for the race, but in the end isn't going to harm anything. So you have just a few more quarters left to go. One full sector, so we're about to hit the second sector split. And there it is. So the hard tires ended up not being able to put in a faster lap than the mediums. I believe we put that 30.1 in on the medium tire early in the race. But crossing the line, Max Verstappen takes the race win with Leclerc and Alonso rounding out the podium positions. Now into the final couple of corners, we're going to grab a top 5 finish, a P4, a fairly good result overall, especially on the heels of a DNF last week.
He has left the field behind. It is victory for Max Verstappen.
Well, that's 2 race wins in a row for them. I think they'll be really happy with that. I mean, 1 race win is great, but to have 2, you know that you've got it. You're a little bit more comfortable in your skin. This is a great sign of maybe what's to come next.
Red Bull put up an outstanding fight for the front position today, and it's great to see it paid off for them. They do so much for the sport that you can't help but be delighted by today's race win.
So you have it, Alonso and Leclerc, another solid podium finish for both of them. 4 different cars in the top 4. Only repeats once we get to top P5 with Carlos Sainz.
After an event like that, who knows what the sport has in store for us next time? Be sure to join us again as we continue to bring you the latest excitement in Formula One.
Fastest lap goes to Leclerc. Nico started P13, finished P13. Not the best day for him. We are closing up on Lando Norris, only 5 points back of him. We're splitting the McLarens in the drivers' standings. Still, though, have quite a bit of effort in order to get anywhere near the top in the constructors to catch up with McLaren. But it's fine. Season 1, we've had very good developments over the course of the season. So let's take a look at our specialists in preparation for the next race. Probably finish in a better position than your teammate in the race. One that we are typically able to do barring a powertrain failure, which is ironic considering it's the powertrain guy that is giving us that test. 32% wear maybe, or two corner cut warnings is a little over the race weekend. It'll be a stretch goal. We'll see if we can pull that one off. 2 sets of tires, easy. 2 tire types on the race strategy. It's a little extra running that I usually don't do in practice. Usually only do the race strategy program once, but if I remember, we'll get a nice healthy bit of extra bonus. So let's take a look at R&D. See where I think 6th best team overall. Taking a look at available developments. Aerodynamics is really where we are short, but the important one that I really want to try and get is this tire wear improvement. We're going to gamble, go for the accelerated development, see if we can't get that big upgrade on before the next race in Circuit of the Americas. So, couple in progress, successful durability testing, and for 2 of those, and here comes our extra weekly resources. New developments, roll dampers did not make it, unfortunately. So the gamble didn't quite pay off. We do have a fuel tank positioning, so a chassis development that did succeed.
Okay,
so 342 points. Let's see if we have enough cash in order to redevelop them and see if we can't get that tire wear back to where we need it to be. So let's head over to R&D, see if we can't afford the redevelopment. It was 800 something originally. Maybe? Aston Martin's jumped over Ferrari prospectively. That's interesting. We don't have enough points to redevelop it, so we're going to have to wait till next week, but We have slid off that lead pack just a little bit more. Circuit of the Americas is usually a tougher track for me as well, so we'll probably just barely trying to mix it up with the back for some points. But thank you all for joining me once again for another episode of the F124 Driver Career. I will catch you guys next time at our second home race of the season. See you next time. Peace.